When the Qur'an says that Jesus came to confirm the Torah that came before him, which Torah was that? Because the Torah Jesus read wasn't a lost heavenly scripture. It was a physical text, already ancient in his time. It existed in scrolls read in synagogues copied by scribes and translated into Greek for the Hellenistic world. We still have those versions today. They are called the Masoretic text, the Samaritan Pentateuch, and most critically the Qumran scrolls written before the ministry of Jesus. Emanuel Tov, one of the world's leading experts on the textual criticism of the Hebrew Bible, writes this about the origins of the standard Hebrew text we have today, the Masoretic text. Nevertheless, the main constituent of the Masoretic text, its consonantal framework, already existed many centuries beforehand, as it is attested in various texts from the Judean desert, which date from the 3rd pre-Christian century until the 2nd century CE. As remarked above, the consonantal framework of the Proto-Masoretic texts is more or less identical with that of the medieval manuscripts, even though they also differ in small details. In other words, there is a more or less identical match between the text of the 1st century and the text standardized 1,000 years later. In fact, when Tov compares an Isaiah scroll from the 1st century BC to the medieval codex our standard text is based on, he describes the relationship as almost identity. The conclusion is inescapable. The Torah that Jesus read, quoted, and confirmed was not a mythic, lost scripture, but a living text, almost identical to the one we have today. And this is where the dilemma begins, because within that very text, the one confirmed by Qumran and confirmed by Jesus, lie the prophecies Islam cannot accept. Isaiah 52 to 53, Psalm 22, Daniel 7, passages that speak of a suffering servant and a reigning divine king. So here lies the first paradox. If Jesus confirmed the Torah, he confirmed these prophecies. But if Islam denies these prophecies, then it must also deny the Torah Jesus confirmed. Muslim apologists typically offer 3 ways out of this paradox. Each one leads to a deeper contradiction. The most common claim is tahrif, that the text was corrupted after Jesus by Jews or Christians. This argument is historically nullified by the Dead Sea Scrolls. The Qumran scrolls are dated to at least 100 years before Christianity began and 600 years before Islam. And those scrolls already contain Isaiah 53 and the other messianic prophecies. These prophecies were not a later invention. They were in the text Jesus himself read. History stands in the way. The second escape route is this: perhaps Jesus only confirmed the uncorrupted parts, or Jesus confirmed the original Torah, which is now lost. This argument self-destructs philosophically. If you claim Jesus confirmed only part of the Torah, you must appeal to an external standard to decide which part is true and which is false. For a Muslim, that standard must be the Qur'an, a book written 6 centuries later. But the Qur'an itself claims its legitimacy through that earlier Torah. This is a circular argument. The Qur'an validates the Torah, and the Torah validates the Qur'an. If one fails, both do. Philosophically, this is called epistemic collapse. Your foundation of truth relies on a source you simultaneously discredit. You cannot both confirm and correct the same revelation. This brings us to the final, most desperate route: reinterpretation. Perhaps Isaiah 53 and Daniel 7 aren't about the Messiah. Maybe they speak of the nation of Israel or a symbolic figure. This move may sound clever, but it detonates a deeper contradiction. Because if the Torah and the prophets contain no messianic framework, then the Qur'an's own title for Jesus becomes meaningless. If no such concept or prophecy existed, then what exactly is Jesus the Messiah of? To say there is no messianic prophecy is to remove the very definition that makes the Quranic Jesus who he is. It leaves us with a hollow identity, a Messiah without messianism. To stand in 1st century Judea and say, "I am the Messiah," without appealing to the messianic prophecies would have been absurd, and Muslims know this principle well. Why do so many Muslim apologists today pour energy into trying to find Muhammad predicted in the Bible? Why do they comb through Genesis, Deuteronomy, or the Song of Songs, straining to locate references to their prophet? They do this because they understand the logic. If someone claims to be a prophet of the God who sent the previous scriptures, he must be able to confirm his identity from those very scriptures. Otherwise, he has no grounding. So by their own reasoning, Jesus must have done the same. If he is the Messiah, then he must prove himself from the scriptures that came before him, which means that the messianic prophecies of the Torah cannot be brushed aside. Many Jews saw the suffering servant as a symbol of Israel itself, and Muslims today gladly borrow that interpretation to dismiss the Christian reading of Isaiah 53. But even if you grant them that, the second layer remains untouched. The Messiah is still described as the ruler, the one who gathers Israel, the high priestly figure who stands before God, the king who reigns. So what happens if Muslims face these texts honestly? They are left with two bad options. Either they accept the Christian reading, in which the Messiah must suffer before he reigns, or they accept the Jewish reading, in which the Messiah is a one-time royal figure who comes to rule. And if they choose that option, they must then explain why Jesus did not take his throne in the first century. If he is the Messiah, then he should have done so. If he did not, then he is a false Messiah. Yet the Qur'an insists that he is indeed the Messiah. The contradiction is unavoidable. To reject these prophecies is to sever Islam from the textual tradition it claims to confirm. To accept them is to admit that the Torah Jesus confirmed foretold exactly what Christianity proclaims, a Messiah who suffers and reigns. Thus, Islam faces a trilemma. If Jesus confirmed the Torah, Islam must accept the messianic prophecies it denies. If the Torah was corrupted, then Jesus confirmed a corrupted book, contradicting the Qur'an. If there were no messianic prophecies to begin with, then the Messiah becomes an empty title, a word without a referent, a faith without a foundation,